It is Friday, March 26th. Let's talk PlayStation. As per usual, we will start with our PlayStation Plus reminder. The March games are currently available right now. Make sure you go ahead and grab those, but also the Play at Home initiative. So, as of right now, in most territories, as you're watching this video, you can go to the PS Store right now and grab 9 fantastic PS4 titles, some of them being PSVR games, but either way, claim them, add them to your account. That way they're always there to go back to if you, for whatever reason, want to play these games. Now, getting into our first news story, it looks like Returnal has officially gone gold. Now, normally, gone gold news stories are kind of like, okay, yeah, the game's done, not all too surprising, but given the last year and this current year, a lot of games have been getting delayed. Returnal was one of them for a short while there. So it is encouraging that the game is actually finished, so it is in all likelihood going to be hitting its April 30th release date. Now I'm just excited to see the actual quality of it and the discussion surrounding it. I'm sure that'll be really fun, but we'll be there when the game comes out and we'll be talking all about it. Moving on to our next news story, we just got new details on The Last of Us HBO TV series. Speaking with IGN during South by Southwest 2021, Neil Druckmann did confirm the first season is based on the first game, although, as expected, certain story elements will deviate from the original story that we were told. So he was quoted saying, "Things sometimes stay pretty close. It is funny to see my dialogue there from the games and HBO scripts, and sometimes they deviate greatly to much better effect because we are dealing with a different medium." He goes on to explain that because it is a game, you have a lot of combat scenarios where you're teaching the player how to use a gun, or, you know, we don't need footage of Joel rummaging through drawers and whatnot, looking for alcohol and scissors. That's kind of expected. He also touches on the superficiality of certain aspects, right, when you're going from game to film, or even books to film, TV, whatever, right? Sometimes people focus on the colors that characters were wearing or the shirts and, you know, stuff like that. He wants to avoid that stuff. They might stay true to it, they might not, but essentially they do want to focus more on the character development and what these characters will go through throughout the series, and obviously that's where most people should probably pay attention to. There is changes that come with adapting a game to film, or TV rather, so I would also hope that most people probably walk into it like that as well. That is an issue with any of these adaptations. People always look at how close it was to the source material, but you don't often want that for every single aspect of that project. Now, while we're on the topic of PlayStation productions, we can also touch on a new project that was just announced yesterday. It is a Ghost of Tsushima movie directed by Chad Stahelski. Really appropriate, I think, especially because I think we all were a little bit curious as to what 10 projects Sony was working on, so we knew about that a few months ago now at this point, that there were 10 projects being evaluated behind the scenes, and up to this point we only knew about 3 of them: Uncharted, Last of Us, Twisted Metal, and now we have a Ghost of Tsushima movie by Chad Stahelski, best known for John Wick, also a stuntman. So I think we've got a very good action-packed movie, possibly in good hands here. So some of the early details that we have is that it's being done by Stahelski, Alex Young, and Jason Spitz. They're producing through their company 8711 Entertainment. We've got Asad Kizilbash and Carter Swan. They'll produce on behalf of PlayStation Productions. Sucker Punch Productions will serve as executive producers, and Peter Kong is overseeing the project on behalf of the studio. So yeah, I think this is actually like Twisted Metal. I don't know, that was a little bit puzzling. Uncharted, okay, makes sense. Last of Us is a TV series, okay, makes sense. And again, we had a Ratchet & Clank movie in 2016 before the formal PlayStation Productions studio was formed, and that unity was really starting with Sony Pictures and PlayStation Productions. We had that. We had the Sly Cooper TV show that didn't actually pan out. Also that recent Ratchet & Clank Life of Pi thing that kind of dropped out of nowhere. But this, I can also really get behind, and it looks like it might be in very good hands. I'm surprised just how serious Sony's actually taking this. So now we've got another project that has been revealed, and I wonder what else is in the pipeline. We might get more of this announced fairly soon. And actually, while we're talking about Ghost of Tsushima, we can also talk about the confirmation that the game shipped 6.5 million copies. I think sold totally worldwide, it's not quite shipped, but impressive number. And also half the people that have played this game have finished it to completion, which is really impressive given that the completion rate for open world games typically is much lower than your standard 8, 12, 16-hour game that's very linear. So it seems like everybody that buys this game really enjoys it. I also enjoyed it, although I'm ashamed to say I have not finished it. It's just one of those titles that I loved it, and, you know, did a lot of the side missions actually before doing any of the main quests, and then you know what happens, just other things come up, you start playing other things, and I know I gotta get back to it. But at the very least, I started it on PS4. When I continue it, it will be on PlayStation 5, where it looks buttery smooth and, dare I say, delicious. For our next news story, it looks like we might find out very soon what Kojima Productions' next title will actually be. Speaking with AI Hub, the studio art director Yoji Shinkawa was asked directly about the studio's next project, which he responded stating, "Well, yeah, I am doing something for sure, and I could tell you probably that we can announce it quite soon." It's important to note this was translated. It could be a little bit iffy in terms of context, but essentially we probably should expect this game soon, given that Kojima loves to hint and tease about his games well before they're actually released. And if he shipped Death Stranding in 2019, even accounting for this rumor of a Death Stranding extended edition, which maybe that's what they're referring to here, even accounting for that, we might actually see his next game in the next 6 months or so, as long as they have something showable in terms of a teaser. Even if the game's 3, 4, 5 years out, I can totally see that happening. But in the context of Kojima, you know, we follow, of course, because Kojima has a long working relationship with Sony. Sony funded Death Stranding. They let him use Decima. He worked closely with Guerrilla Games on that. So this is something where maybe Sony's still involved in some way if they're continuing to use Decima, but that's not really a guarantee, of course. In fact, there was a slight report, or a small report rather, that Kojima was working or trying to work with Stadia in some way. Google denied that, and obviously they closed down all their first-party stuff, so they're not that interested in funding projects themselves. But Kojima has said since shipping Death Stranding, he wants to do a horror game of some kind, maybe smaller in nature. And, well, the other thing that we have, too, is that recently Xbox head Phil Spencer, anytime he's doing something on camera, you can see in his background that there's these teases and nods to certain things, which actually, I mean, normally I try to avoid the tinfoil hat stuff because 99% of the time everybody's always theorizing about things that don't actually happen or they have no chance of happening. But since he actually has done this, there's some meaningful evidence that maybe there is something back there that means something now. And the most recent one shows the Ludens figure next to the Xbox logo, and there's a few other things back there to kind of throw people off. But based off of how aggressive Microsoft's been with their capital, like, for example, they're also looking at acquiring Discord for around $10 billion, which would be an extremely good get. I haven't mentioned a few times that Discord would be great on PlayStation due to how, you know, communities didn't really pan out all that well, so that would be another good get there. And I warned 2 years ago that Microsoft is going to get really aggressive in this area because clearly they want to stay in this business, and that's one way to do it. So maybe they have stepped up to the plate to fund the next project, or at the very least offered timed exclusivity. But it depends, right? So if Kojima is using Decima still, then in all likelihood Sony's not going to let that go over to Xbox or anything like that, right? They might allow a PC release again if they even want to stay involved after Death Stranding, who knows. But for now, at least, if it's Kojima related, we will keep our eye on it and see what that next game will be. I thoroughly enjoyed Death Stranding. A lot of people did, but also a lot of people didn't. So, you know, we'll see how that plays out. Now, moving on to probably one of our larger news stories from this past week, but TheGamer.com is reporting that come July 2nd, the PS3 and PSP PlayStation Store will close 100% permanently, as in you cannot buy brand new games. And then come August 27th, the same fate will reach PS Vita. You cannot buy brand new games from the PS Store. They will be totally closed. And that apparently Sony will make this official by the end of the month. They also cite a source that is anonymous, but apparently this source is close to the situation. And then publicly, we also have the Scourgebringer director, Thomas Altenberger, who is sending out tweets saying that the PS Vita version of this game, he thinks it's the last PS Vita version, or the last PS Vita game that will be available. But since then, he's deleted these tweets. We also have Colin Moriarty of Last Stand Media and Lily Mo Games, who recently purchased a PS Vita dev kit from Sony. He did not hear anything. He also talked to other Vita developers as well. They didn't hear anything. So right now we've got an anonymous source, one public that deleted tweets, and then one public that said otherwise, that essentially this probably isn't happening. And that's where we are right now. It's a rumor, but if this is official and the report's accurate, then we should find out about this within a few days. But for now, at least, we have to treat it as a rumor. And yeah, this caused quite the conversation for a number of reasons. Myself included, I was shocked actually when I initially saw this, because I thought, okay, that seems soon actually, because while PlayStation 3, PSP, and Vita are very old at this point, you can still leave these stores up and let them generate, you know, what is small but passive revenue. Now, who knows if it's even worth it at this point, because it does eat up all this bandwidth space to keep these games live and accepting all those transactions. But, you know, I don't know, right? I mean, the thing is, PlayStation 3 is 14 years old, or coming up on 15 years old this year. PSP technically had its formal store closure in 2016, but actually, if you do use a PSP today, and if you are crazy enough to actually pay for games on it like I did not too long ago, the store actually still works in that you can view your download list, and you can also manually search for games, and I think you can still do transactions directly on a PSP that way. But this is a matter of completely shutting down the store. Now, if Sony does make this official, I would hope that they give us complete answers and that what does this really look like? Is new purchases closed off, but you can still access your download list? Or is this something where you can't access the download list, make sure you grab all these titles, but we'll also still let you log into PSN, obviously, because the one big issue and the huge caveat to this was the conversation surrounding game preservation. So, yeah, these are legacy platforms, and let's be honest, the vast majority of people are not spending or buying on PlayStation. You can raise your hand all you want, but you are part of a very small group, myself included. But game preservation is a concern here, and the concern is that these systems, if they're not able to pull some of these games back at the very minimum, then you've got systems that are taking time bombs, because parts do break eventually, and if you can't authenticate purchases through PSN, that could be a huge problem, especially because the one issue that was highlighted is the small little CMOS battery on PS3s and PS4s even, where if those go bad, actually you are seeing a disruption in offline play. So for PS3, if this goes bad, you lose access to those digital purchases. You can still play discs. PS4, this is actually much worse. If that little battery goes bad, it's a small little thing on the motherboard. If that goes bad, you actually lose disc playback, and you lose offline disc playback. That little battery is responsible for the internal clock. It actually tracks, well, not only is it there to authenticate purchases, but also to track trophy timestamps. So if you've noticed, you can change the time on your PlayStation consoles, but when you earn a trophy, the time is still accurate exactly to when you earned it. You can't change the time in any way to reflect that. That's what that little battery is for. But if that goes bad, you're going to hit an error code on PS4 where you can't play anything. Same with PS3, but only, again, digital goods. And so you can swap that battery out and you'll be fine. You just turn the system back on, log into PSN, and authenticate and, you know, get that internal clock going again. But in the case where you someday can't connect to PSN, that is also a major problem as well. Then you've 100% got a brick of a console that can't play or do anything and will never be able to be repaired beyond the state that it's currently in. So that's, you know, the thing is, we got to leave it here for now until Sony does or does not say anything, right? At least right now, the one thing I can say for the PS4 issue, or even PS3, the CMOS battery, this is a story about the store closing. Even if the store closes, as long as PSN login is still there, then essentially the consoles can still go in terms of maintaining a library, especially if you can still pull the downloads back. Stopping purchases, yeah, it sucks. If we lose re-downloads, that'll be even worse. And if we lose PSN completely, that is the absolute, the bottom of the barrel scenario. We don't want that whatsoever. And it is baffling that they weren't a little bit more forward, or at least not future-proofing these platforms in such a way where a firmware update could go out near the end of the life cycle that will allow that battery to not brick these consoles, more or less, right? Even for PS4, or namely more so for PS4. Make it so that if that little battery goes bad, put out a firmware update that says, okay, hey, here's your error code, you can't earn trophies anymore, but offline playback is still possible. Yeah, we can't say much else right now, but it is troubling, it's disappointing, I'm right there with you. Although this is the reality of buying digital content. It's something that will eventually happen, but the good thing is there is still a strong community of jailbreakers, modders, and they're building tons of databases and making it so you can pull these games back. And there's incredible headway in that area. I don't ever really talk about it here, but at least we've got that part of the community that does care about the game preservation. Now, on the heels of that story, we also had, I think the following day, a brand new Sony patent about trophies being awarded for emulated software. So put these two together and you've got a lot of people now theorizing, oh, maybe PS5 is going to have emulation for PS1, 2, 3, is it finally coming, this, that, and the other. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but while this recent patent that came out has a new publication date, and I believe it was also filed late last year, so it does have the appearance of being new, but it is word for word, I think, pretty much the same one we saw back in 2012 or 2013, method apparatus for awarding trophies. This is actually a patent that is in use. We have actually seen it in practice for PlayStation 2 emulated software on PS4 back when Sony started that program in 2015. So we go through patents all the time, and 99% of them don't ever actually become a thing. However, that one we actually saw and used today if you've ever bought a PS2 game on PS4. Not new, so this is probably just an updated version of it or something, but this is this is no indication of new emulated software coming to PS5 or PS4. In fact, we saw that program become very short-lived. There's 50-something PS2 games, and it doesn't seem like we're getting any more. Moving on to our next news story. This one's actually a little bit old. It's from last Thursday, but I figured we'd bring this up since no one's really talking about it. Probably because it's from VG Charts, which they're not super accurate. They do use estimates, but given what we know so far, they can't be too far off, which is updated worldwide sales figures for all the consoles up to the first or second week of March, which our first official PS5 number at the end of 2020 was 4.5 million. Well, apparently now, estimated, Sony sold about 6.07 million PlayStation 5s, Microsoft 3.9 million Series consoles, and then Nintendo with their more mature platform about 80 million Nintendo Switches. And I mean, every single week they're removing about 300 to 400,000 of those things, which is absolutely nuts. But last week we did touch on the February MPD, and that's where we covered here in the US, PS5 is the fastest selling console in terms of dollar sales, and there's a 1% difference between PS4 in terms of actual units, so they're very close, neck and neck, which is miraculous given the circumstances of the global semiconductor shortage. Microsoft, in this scenario, they have admitted they started manufacturing later than Sony, so it'll still be a while until we get a broader, more concrete picture of just how well they're both doing compared to one another, until all the machines are readily available for purchase, as in you can walk into a store and there's plenty of them sitting on the store shelf. Until demand is fully met, we can't really, talk about that. Every single machine's getting sold eventually. Either way, they're all doing fantastic, though. It's just, it'll still be a while until it's no problem to buy one of these things. For our next news story, the BAFTA Game Awards are officially over, and much like we've seen with previous award ceremonies within the last year, Sony's first party and second party walked away with some accolades. So animation went to The Last of Us Part 2, Best Family and British Game went to Sackboy: A Big Adventure, EE Game of the Year went to The Last of Us Part 2. They also had a separate category for Best Game, which was Hades, and actually Hades won a lot of awards as well, which I'm super pumped about. Best Music went to Spider-Man Miles Morales, and then Performing in a Leading Role went to Laura Bailey as Abby in The Last of Us Part 2, and then Technical Achievement was Dreams, and then BAFTA Fellowship went to Siobhan Reddy of Media Molecule, which is also great to see as well, especially for the work that Dreams has been doing, and Siobhan specifically. It's a huge honor, so congrats to her. And now I can't wait to see how this generation pans out for Sony's first party output. I mean, PS4, that generation spoke for itself in terms of Sony's developers really elevating themselves far beyond what they were accomplishing on PS3. And so I think going into PS5, where you're expecting some risky new IPs, but also risky changes to existing IPs, that stuff is bold, ambitious. I want to see more of it, and I just wonder if they can keep up with that momentum that they had throughout all of the PS4 generation and bringing home so many awards. They're really good games, but will they keep that up? Now, with all that said, it is time to get to Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway where one of you could win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or Twitter. If you would like to win a $10 PSN code, it's very easy. Follow the link down below. Supporting this channel, a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week because I'm trying to pay for your games. Those are all the news stories that I want to talk about with you all. Our Tuesday video was PS5 versus PS4, things I'm really enjoying about the new console, but then also features and initiatives, and there's a lot that I do miss from PS4. I wish it was still a thing here. Go check out that conversation. And then as always, expect another Tuesday upload, and that's about it. So that concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Boetk. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.